While I buried my husband alone, my family was celebrating across town. The icy wind hit my tear-soaked face as I held a bouquet of white lilies in front of Arthur's grave. The cemetery was completely empty. Only the sound of dirt falling on the mahogany casket broke the deathly silence. In that moment, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Michael, my oldest son. I thought he would finally give me an explanation for his absence, but when I read his words, it felt like a dagger twisting in my heart. "Stop being so dramatic, Mom. My wife needs the money for her dream wedding." He was referring to the $800,000 trust fund that Arthur had left behind. $800,000 that my husband had saved over decades, working day and night in his auto shop, sacrificing vacations and luxuries to secure our future. I am Clara. I am 68 years old, and after 42 years of marriage, I have just discovered that to my own children, I am less important than money. Arthur died of a massive heart attack 3 days ago, and instead of being by my side to comfort me, Michael and his wife Jessica were tasting cakes at the most exclusive bakery downtown. Ethan, my younger son, hadn't even answered my calls. The last time I spoke to him was when I told him his father had died. He just said, "That's a shame, Mom," and hung up. I later found out from a neighbor that he was playing golf with his friends that same afternoon. The pastor finished his prayer and approached me with compassion. "Mrs. Miller, are you sure you don't want us to wait a little longer? Perhaps your sons are on their way." I thanked him with a bitter smile and told him to proceed. I knew no one was coming. As I walked toward the cemetery exit, I remembered the last words Arthur whispered to me in the hospital before his heart stopped forever. "Clara, my love, take care of that money. Don't let anyone take advantage of you." At that moment, I thought he was referring to strangers. I never imagined he was talking about our own children. I arrived home and found it just as I had left it 3 hours earlier. Full of flowers sent by neighbors and friends, but empty of family. Not a single wreath from Michael or Ethan. Not even a condolence call from Jessica, who had always been cold to me, but I never imagined she would reach this level of cruelty. I sat on the armchair where Arthur used to read the newspaper every morning and reread Michael's message. There was more. Jessica already booked the ballroom at the Grand Plaza Hotel. The wedding is in 6 months, and she needs $50,000 for the dress alone. "Don't be selfish, Mom. Dad would have wanted us to be happy." My hands trembled with indignation. Selfish? I, who had worked cleaning houses for years to help pay for Michael's college tuition. I, who had cared for Ethan when he was hospitalized with pneumonia and Michael didn't lift a finger to help. I, who had always put my children before myself. The phone rang. It was Jessica. I answered, hoping for at least a few words of condolence, but her voice was firm and calculating. "Clara, I know you're going through a difficult time, but we need to talk about Arthur's money. Michael and I have been planning our vow renewal and—" "Vow renewal," I interrupted. "I thought it was for your dream wedding." "Well, it's the same thing. The point is, we need access to the trust immediately. I've already made appointments with florists and the most exclusive event planner in the city. We can't lose those deposits." The blood rushed to my head. "Jessica, my husband died 3 days ago. You didn't even come to the funeral." "Oh, Clara, don't be so dramatic. Arthur isn't suffering anymore. We're still alive and we have plans. Besides, that money is no use to you at your age. Michael is your eldest son. He has a right to that inheritance." I hung up the phone without another word. My hands were shaking with rage and pain. In that moment, I understood that Arthur's death had not only shattered my heart, but had revealed the true nature of the people I thought loved me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Arthur's face, asking me why our sons hadn't been at his funeral. I got up at 3 in the morning and went to the kitchen to make some chamomile tea, but my hands were shaking so much that I spilled boiling water on the counter. At 6 in the morning, just as the sun was rising, Michael knocked on the door. He hadn't slept all night. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes, and his clothes were wrinkled. I thought he had come to apologize, that he had finally reflected on what he had done. How naive I was. "Mom, we need to talk about Dad's will," were his first words. Not even a good morning or a "how are you doing after the funeral?" Just money, always money. "Good morning to you too, Michael. How have you been?" I replied with sarcasm, but he didn't get the hint. Terrible, Mom. Jessica hasn't slept all night, worried about the wedding. We've already paid a $15,000 deposit to the event planner and another $20,000 to the photographer. If we don't confirm the rest of the payments this week, we lose all the money. I stared at him in disbelief. Your father died 4 days ago, Michael. Is a party really your only concern? It's not just a party, Mom. It's the most important vow renewal of our lives. Jessica deserves to have the celebration she always dreamed of. Dad would have wanted to see us happy. Your father would have wanted you at his funeral, I answered, my voice breaking. He would have wanted you to comfort your mother in the most difficult moment of her life. Michael ran his hands through his hair, visibly irritated. Look, Mom, we already talked about this. Jessica had an important appointment with the designer. The dress she chose costs $45,000, and there was only one date available for the final fitting. We couldn't miss that opportunity. $45,000 for a dress. The words escaped my lips in a choked cry. It's Italian silk, with ivory-colored Swarovski crystal embellishments. Jessica researched for months to find the perfect design. Plus, the veil costs another $8,000. It's authentic 19th century French lace. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. While I was mourning the death of the man who had been the love of my life for 4 decades, my daughter-in-law was spending fortunes on clothes to show off in front of people who probably didn't even really know us. Michael, your father worked 60 hours a week for 30 years to save that money. He skipped meals so he wouldn't spend money at restaurants. He wore the same work shirt until it had holes in it. And you want to throw it all away on a one-day party? It's not throwing money away, Mom. It's an investment in our future. Jessica has very important contacts who are going to attend. Her cousin's husband is a partner at a very prestigious law firm. If we make a good impression, they might offer me a much better job than the one I have now. And what about Ethan? Does he also think I should give you his father's entire inheritance? Michael awkwardly averted his gaze. Ethan agrees with me. In fact, he needs money too. He wants to buy a new truck for his landscaping business. We thought you could give him about $50,000 and the rest for our celebration. You talk about me as if I were already dead. The question came out, laden with pain and disappointment. Don't be dramatic, Mom. We're just getting organized for the future. You already have the house paid off, and Dad left you his life insurance. You don't need that much money. In that moment, I felt as if Arthur were standing beside me, whispering in my ear to be strong. I stood up from the armchair where we were sitting and looked him straight in the eye. The trust cannot be touched for 6 months, according to your father's legal provisions. So even if I wanted to give you the money, which I don't, I can't. Michael's face transformed completely. The mask of the concerned son disappeared, and for the first time, I saw pure greed in his eyes. That can't be true. Dad never mentioned any restrictions. You're making that up to keep all the money for yourself. Your father was very careful with his financial decisions, Michael. He knew situations like this could happen. Situations like what? His children needing financial support? Situations where grief and greed get confused? I replied firmly. Michael shot up abruptly, knocking over the coffee cup he had been holding. The brown liquid spilled all over the coffee table that Arthur had made with his own hands years ago. This isn't over, Mom. Jessica is not going to take no for an answer. She's already invited 200 people. Her mother flew in from Miami specifically to help with the preparations. You can't ruin her life just because you're going through a rough patch. A rough patch. The words came out of my throat like a roar. My husband died, Michael. The man I shared more than half my life with is gone. I know that, Mom. But life goes on. Dad would have wanted us to move forward, not to stay here crying forever. He headed for the door, but before leaving, he turned back with an expression I had never seen on him. Jessica told me that if we don't get the money this week, maybe it's best if we take some distance from the family for a while. The children don't need to see their grandmother in such a negative state. And he left, leaving me alone with the spilled coffee and the cruelest threat I had ever heard in my life. They were going to take my grandchildren away from me if I didn't hand over the money Arthur had worked so hard to save. After Michael left, I remained sitting on the armchair, staring at the coffee spilled on the table Arthur had built with so much love. The brown stains spread across the wood like dark tears, and I couldn't stop thinking about my son's last words. They would take my grandchildren from me if I didn't give in to their demands. My grandchildren, 8-year-old Mason and 5-year-old Lily, were the light of my life. Every Friday they would come over, and Arthur would teach them how to use his tools in the garage while I baked their favorite cookies. Lily always told me that when she grew up, she wanted to cook like me, and Mason had promised that when he was big, he would buy me a house by the sea. I couldn't lose those children. They were the only part of Arthur I had left in this world. The doorbell rang. It was Ethan, my younger son. Unlike Michael, who had at least had the decency to come talk to me face to face, Ethan had been completely absent since his father's death. I saw him through the window. He was wearing a pink golf shirt and beige pants, as if he had come straight from the country club. "Hi, Mom," he said when I opened the door. His voice was forcedly casual, as if we were neighbors bumping into each other by chance. "Ethan, son, come in. How have you been?" I offered my cheek for a kiss, but he barely brushed my skin with his lips. "Fine, Mom, fine. Busy with the business. You know how it is with employees." He sat in the armchair where Michael had been hours before, but kept his distance, as if grief were contagious. "I guess Michael already told you about our conversation this morning." "Yes," he called me. "He says you were pretty hard on him. Jessica is very upset." "Jessica is upset." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Ethan, your father died 4 days ago and neither of you came to the funeral. How do you think I feel?" Ethan sighed like a teenager being scolded for being late. "Look, Mom, I know you're sad, but Dad wouldn't have wanted us to ruin our lives by mourning all the time. He always told us to be practical." "Practical." I repeated the word as if it were poison. "Do you know what's practical, Ethan? Sons comforting their mother when she's widowed, coming to the funeral of the man who raised them and paid for their education." "Oh, Mom, don't start with the sermons. Michael told me you were very dramatic with him. Look, I come in peace. I just need you to listen to me." "I'm listening." "I need $60,000 to buy a new truck. The one I have is almost 10 years old, and my clients are starting to complain. If I want to keep my landscaping business, I need to project a more professional image." I stared at him in silence. That was Ethan, always the more direct of my sons, but also the coldest. While Michael at least feigned concern, Ethan got straight to the point without beating around the bush. $60,000 for a truck. It's not just a truck, Mom. It's a brand new Ford F-350, with all the tools included and an automatic irrigation system in the back. With that truck, I could get contracts with big companies, not just private homes. Your father drove the same truck for 15 years, Ethan. He never complained about his image. Times change, Mom. People notice those things now. If I show up at a mansion in an old, rusty truck, they're going to think I'm a mediocre landscaper. And what about me? What am I going to do when I'm 80 and need medical care or a nursing home? Ethan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Mom, you're only 68. You're perfectly healthy. Besides, we'll always be here to take care of you. Like you were here when your father died? That's different. Dad was already gone. We couldn't do anything to help him. But you're alive, and so are we. We have to move on. I stood up and went to the kitchen. I needed to get away from him before I said something I would regret. Ethan followed me. Look, Mom, I know Michael told you about the trust's restrictions, but I spoke with a lawyer, and he says that if you sign an authorization, we can access the money immediately. You spoke with a lawyer? Without consulting me? It's my inheritance too, Mom. I have a right to know my options. It's not your inheritance, Ethan. It's a trust your father established to ensure my well-being. Any money that's left when I'm gone, that will be your inheritance. But that could be in 20 years or more. What are we supposed to do in the meantime? Live like we're poor while you're sitting on a pile of money? His words felt like slaps. Poor? Ethan, you have your own business. Michael has a stable job. Your wives work. None of you are starving. It's not just about basic needs, Mom. It's about having a decent life, being able to give our kids the best, being able to enjoy ourselves while we're young. Your father never enjoyed himself when he was young. He worked 14 hours a day, so you could go to good schools and have what he never had. And that was fine for his generation, Mom. But we think differently. We don't want to work ourselves to death just to leave money behind that we might never get to enjoy. Just then, my phone rang. It was Jessica. Ethan gestured for me to answer and put it on speaker. "Clara, I hope you've had time to reflect on what we talked about yesterday." Her voice was cold and calculating. "Jessica, I'm talking with Ethan right now." "Perfect. Then you can both hear what I have to say. I've been doing some research and I found out that Arthur established that trust just 2 years ago. That means he knew he was going to die and did it specifically to control us from the grave." "How dare you?" The words roared out of my throat. "It's the truth, Clara. Your husband was a controlling man who didn't trust his own children. He probably filled your head with paranoid ideas about us. Arthur never spoke ill of you. Then explain why he put so many restrictions on the money. A normal father would have left a simple, direct inheritance." Ethan nodded from his spot in the kitchen, as if Jessica's words made sense. "Besides," Jessica continued, "I've been talking to my friends, and they all say it's very strange for a woman your age to cling so tightly to money. Most mothers want to see their children happy and prosperous while they're alive, not after they're dead." "My friends feel the same way," Ethan chimed in. "They say it's selfish of you to deny us the money when we're the ones with expenses and responsibilities." I sank into a kitchen chair, my legs trembling with indignation. "Your friends have opinions about my private life?" "Clara, don't be paranoid," Jessica said from the phone. "We're just seeking advice from people who have been through similar situations." "Similar situations? They know a lot of people who extort recently bereaved widows?" "Don't be dramatic," Jessica yelled. "No one is extorting you. We just want what's rightfully ours." Ethan came over and put a hand on my shoulder. "Mom, think about it. If you give us the money now, you'll be a part of our happiness. You'll get to see us enjoy it, see how we use it to improve our lives. Isn't that better than saving the money for when you're not here anymore?" I looked at my younger son, the boy I had rocked when he had nightmares, the one I had cared for in the hospital with pneumonia, the one I had defended when other kids bullied him at school. And I recognized nothing of the son I had raised in the man standing before me. "Get out of my house," I whispered. "What?" Ethan asked. I said, "Get out of my house. Both of you. Right now." Ethan stood frozen for a moment, as if he hadn't heard me correctly. Jessica was still talking on the phone, but I hung up without giving her a chance to finish. The silence that followed was deafening. "Mom, you can't be serious," Ethan finally said, a mix of disbelief and condescension in his voice. "You're upset. It's normal after a loss like this. Maybe you should see a therapist." "I'm not upset, Ethan. I am perfectly sane. And for the first time in 4 days, I see my sons for who they truly are. Look, if you don't want to give me the $60,000 right now, that's fine. We can wait a few weeks until you're calmer." "It's not going to be a few weeks, Ethan. It's going to be 6 months at a minimum, which is what your father stipulated. And after what I've heard today, maybe never." Ethan's expression changed completely. The mask of the understanding son vanished, and I saw the same greed I had seen in Michael's eyes that morning. "You're threatening to disinherit us?" "I'm not threatening anything. I'm just saying that your behavior is showing me that maybe Arthur was right to be cautious with that money. This is ridiculous. We're your sons, Mom, your only family. My family was with me when I buried Arthur. My family would have comforted me instead of demanding money before my husband's body was cold in the grave." Ethan paced the kitchen like a caged animal. "You know what? You're right. Maybe you do need time to process all this. But let's be clear. Michael and I are not going to give up what is rightfully ours. By right? Your father worked himself to the bone to save that money. You two didn't lift a finger to help him. He never asked for our help, because he was too proud to admit he needed support. But you could have offered." Ethan headed for the front door. Before leaving, he turned back with an expression that chilled me to the bone. "Mom, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. Jessica has a lot of contacts. She knows lawyers, doctors, social workers. If she wants to, she can make your life very complicated. She can make people think you're losing your mental faculties, that you're not capable of handling so much money on your own. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you, Jessica is not someone you want to mess with. She's very smart and very determined when she wants something. And he left, leaving me alone in a house that suddenly felt like a prison. I sat on the sofa where Arthur and I used to watch the news every night, and for the first time since his death, I cried uncontrollably. They weren't just tears of sadness for losing my husband, but tears of betrayal, of disillusionment, of a loneliness so deep it hurt physically. How had I raised two sons capable of such cruelty? Where had I failed as a mother? Arthur always told me I was too permissive with them, that I gave them everything they asked for without teaching them the value of hard work. Maybe he was right. The phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Miller? The voice was an older woman's, with an accent I couldn't place. Yes, this is she. This is Eleanor, your neighbor from the yellow house at the end of the street. We met years ago at a neighborhood watch meeting. I vaguely remembered a short, gray-haired woman who always kept her garden immaculate. Oh yes, Mrs. Eleanor. How are you? Very well, thank you. I'm calling because I saw your sons came to visit today and left looking very upset. I just wanted to make sure you were all right. I was surprised that someone cared. In the last few days, apart from a few condolence calls from Arthur's friends, no one had shown genuine interest in my well-being. I'm fine, thank you for asking. It's just. These are difficult times. I can imagine. Losing a husband after so many years must be devastating. I lost mine 5 years ago, and there are still days I wake up expecting to see him in the kitchen making coffee. Her words were like a balm to my wounded soul. Finally, someone who understood my pain without trying to minimize it or use it against me. Would you like me to come over? I made a lemon pound cake this morning, and it's far too big for just me. I would love that, Mrs. Eleanor. The truth is, I could use the company. Half an hour later, Eleanor knocked on my door with a homemade cake that smelled like heaven. She was a woman of about 70, with kind eyes and a smile that radiated genuine warmth. Oh, my dear, you look exhausted, was the first thing she said when I opened the door. It's been a very difficult few days, I can imagine. Come on, let's sit down and talk. Sometimes all we need is for someone to listen without judging. We sat in the kitchen with tea and cake. Eleanor didn't press me to talk. She just waited patiently while I gathered the courage to tell her what had happened. Mrs. Eleanor, is it normal for children to behave this way when a parent dies? What do you mean, dear? I told her everything, the absence at the funeral, the demands for money, the threats, the absolute coldness toward my grief. Eleanor listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding with an increasingly concerned expression. Oh, Clara, what you're telling me is not normal at all. When my husband died, my children didn't leave my side for weeks. They were more worried about my emotional well-being than about any inheritance. Maybe I failed as a mother. Maybe I spoiled them too much. Don't say that. You are not responsible for the decisions your adult children make. From what you're telling me, it sounds like they've completely lost perspective. I don't know what to do. Ethan threatened me, saying his sister-in-law can cause legal trouble. He says she can make people think I'm losing my mental faculties. Eleanor set her teacup on the table with more force than necessary. You know what? I have a nephew who's a lawyer. David is his name. He's very good with inheritance and trust issues. Would you like me to ask him to come speak with you? I don't know if I can afford a lawyer right now. Don't you worry about that. David is a good man. I'm sure he'll give you a free consultation to advise you on your rights. The important thing is for you to know exactly where you stand legally. Do you think I'm doing the right thing by not giving them the money immediately? My dear, your husband set up those conditions for a reason. Men like Arthur, who work hard their whole lives to save money, don't make financial decisions lightly. He knew you, and he knew his sons. If he put restrictions in place, it was for a good reason. But they say I'm being selfish. Selfish? You just buried your husband, and they are demanding money instead of comforting you. If anyone is being selfish here, it's not you. For the first time in days, I felt someone was validating my feelings instead of minimizing them. Eleanor was right. What was happening was not normal. Can I ask you something, Mrs. Eleanor? Of course. What would you have done if your sons hadn't gone to your husband's funeral? Eleanor looked me straight in the eye. I would have understood that they were no longer the children I raised. And I would have taken the necessary steps to protect myself. What kind of steps? Whatever steps were necessary. Sometimes, dear Clara, the people we love the most are the ones who can hurt us the most. And when that happens, we have to choose between protecting ourselves or letting them destroy us. That night, for the first time since Arthur's death, I was able to sleep for a few hours. Eleanor's words had lit a spark of hope in my shattered heart. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. Maybe there was a way out of this nightmare without losing my dignity or betraying my husband's memory. The next day, at 10 in the morning, Eleanor arrived accompanied by a man of about 40, dressed in an elegant but not flashy gray suit. David had a kind smile and intelligent eyes that immediately inspired confidence. "Mrs. Miller, I'm very sorry for your loss," was the first thing he said, and I could feel that his condolences were genuine, not a formality like those I had received from my own sons. "Thank you, David. Your aunt told me you could help me better understand my legal situation. Of course, Eleanor told me a little about what's happening, and I want you to know that what your sons are doing is not only morally questionable, but it could also have serious legal implications." We sat in the living room, and David took out a notepad. "Could you tell me exactly what kind of trust your husband established?" I explained everything I knew about the provisions Arthur had made, the time restrictions, and the conditions he had set for accessing the money. David took meticulous notes and occasionally asked specific questions. "Did your husband give you any particular reason for establishing these restrictions?" About a year ago, Arthur started to worry about our son's attitude toward money. Michael had borrowed $15,000 for a business that never took off and never paid us back. Ethan constantly complained that he didn't have enough money to expand his business, but he would spend thousands of dollars on golf equipment. And Jessica, my daughter-in-law, had always shown an interest in the family's money. Arthur never fully warmed up to her. He said she was too materialistic, that she only talked about expensive brands and luxurious trips, but I thought it was just that they came from different worlds. David nodded thoughtfully. "Have your sons made any specific threats against you?" I told him about Ethan's threat regarding Jessica, making it seem like I was losing my mental faculties. David stopped writing and looked at me seriously. "Mrs. Miller, that is a very serious threat. They are talking about a potential attempt at a legal conservatorship. If they manage to convince a judge that you are not mentally competent to handle your financial affairs, they could gain guardianship over you and full access to the trust." I felt as if ice water had been thrown on me. Can they do that? They can try, but there would have to be real medical evidence of mental incapacity. The problem is that the process can be very stressful and expensive, even if you win the case in the end. What can I do to protect myself? First, we're going to document everything, every conversation, every threat, every demand for money. Second, I'm going to recommend you get a full psychological evaluation with a professional I trust. That way, we'll have medical evidence that you are perfectly sane. Is that necessary? It's a preventive measure, Mrs. Miller. If they try something, we want to be prepared. Eleanor, who had been listening quietly, leaned forward. "David, what if the sons keep pressuring her or harassing her? We can file for a temporary restraining order. If the threats or harassment continue, especially given the emotional vulnerability of recent bereavement, a judge might consider it emotional abuse." At that moment, the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw a red truck in the driveway. It was Ethan, but this time he was accompanied by a blonde woman I didn't know. "It's my son and a woman I don't recognize," I told David. "Do you want me to stay while you talk to them?" "Yes, please." I opened the door, and Ethan greeted me with a forced smile. "Hi, Mom. I brought someone I want you to meet. This is Patricia, a very experienced social worker." Patricia was a woman in her 50s with a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mrs. Miller, your son told me about your situation, and I wanted to offer my services. Sometimes, after a traumatic loss like your husband's, older adults need professional support to make important decisions." David stepped forward from the living room. "Excuse me, I'm David Clark, Mrs. Miller's attorney. May I ask what exactly your role is here?" Ethan became visibly nervous. David, right?" "I'm Ethan, my mom's younger son. Patricia is a friend who is helping us navigate this difficult situation. Friend or hired professional? David asked in a firm tone. Patricia exchanged a glance with Ethan before answering. I'm a licensed social worker. Ethan contacted me because he's concerned about his mother's well-being. I see. And what kind of evaluation are you planning to conduct? We just want to make sure Mrs. Miller is making rational decisions about her financial future. Sometimes the grief of mourning can cloud one's judgment. David took a business card from his pocket. I am the attorney representing Mrs. Miller in all matters related to her late husband's trust. Any professional evaluation or intervention must be coordinated through my office. Ethan turned red with anger. Mom, you hired a lawyer? Are you really going to go to such extremes? Ethan, my lawyer is here to protect my legal interests, which is apparently something I need to do. This is ridiculous. We're just trying to help you see things clearly. Patricia intervened with a saccharine voice. Mrs. Miller, I understand you may feel your sons are being insensitive, but sometimes families need professional mediation to resolve conflicts over inheritance. There are no conflicts over inheritance, David said firmly. There is a legal trust established by my client's husband with very specific conditions. There is nothing to mediate. But what if Mrs. Miller were willing to be more flexible? Patricia began to say. My client does not need to be more flexible with her own money, David interrupted. Ethan exploded. It's not just her money. It's family money. Michael and I have a right to that inheritance. Currently, you have no right to anything, David replied calmly. The trust is very clear in its terms. Patricia tried to smooth things over. Perhaps we could all sit down and discuss options that would benefit the entire family. Eleanor, who had been watching from the kitchen doorway, stepped forward. Excuse me, but I think you are pressuring a woman who just buried her husband. This is not appropriate. And who are you? Ethan asked sharply. I'm Eleanor, Clara's neighbor and friend, and what you're doing is shameful. This isn't your problem, ma'am. It becomes my problem when I see a grieving woman being taken advantage of. Ethan turned to me, ignoring the others. Mom, you have to understand that Jessica has already booked everything for the wedding. The venue, the food, the music, the flowers. If we cancel now, we lose all the deposits. It's over $50,000. $50,000 in deposits? I asked in disbelief. The wedding is going to cost $300,000 in total. It's the most important celebration of our lives. David let out a low whistle. $300,000. That's more than a third of the entire trust. Exactly, said Patricia. That's why it's so important for the family to find a solution that works for everyone. The solution already exists, David replied. It's called waiting the 6 months stipulated by the trust and then following the proper legal procedures. Ethan approached me, desperation in his eyes. Mom, please. Jessica is threatening to cancel the wedding completely if we don't get the money this week. She says she can't live with the humiliation of having to explain to 200 people why we can't afford what we promised. And what about the humiliation you caused me by not coming to your father's funeral? That's different, Mom. That's in the past. This is about our future. My future matters too, Ethan. And my present. I am in mourning. I need time to process my husband's death, and you have only given me more pain. Patricia tried to intervene again. Mrs. Miller, I understand your pain, but sometimes acting quickly in family situations can prevent long-term resentment. David stepped between us. Miss Patricia, could you please show me your professional credentials? I'd like to verify your license before you continue advising my client. Patricia paled slightly. Of course, but I don't have my documents with me right now. How convenient, Eleanor muttered. Ethan realized the situation was spiraling out of control. Mom, this isn't going to end here. Michael is consulting with other lawyers too. If you don't want to cooperate amicably, we'll have to explore other options. Are you threatening me in front of my lawyer? I'm telling you the reality of the situation. The reality is that you have no legal basis for your demands, David responded. And if you continue this behavior, you could face charges for coercion and elder abuse. Ethan and Patricia left, but not before Ethan told me, This isn't over, Mom. Jessica is not going to take no for an answer. After they left, I sat trembling on the sofa. David and Eleanor sat beside me. "Am I doing the right thing?" I asked them. "Mrs. Miller," David said, "what you just witnessed was a very sophisticated manipulation attempt. They brought that woman here to intimidate you and make you believe you need professional intervention. That's not family love. That's financial abuse." Eleanor took my hand. "My dear, your sons have lost all perspective. They are willing to do anything for that money. What do I do now?" "Now," David said, "we prepare. Because something tells me this is just the beginning." The following days were a nightmare I couldn't have imagined in my worst dreams. Michael and Ethan began a systematic campaign to make my life unbearable. First came the constant calls. Every 2 hours, the phone would ring with one of them on the other end, pleading, manipulating, threatening. "Mom, Jessica hasn't been able to sleep in 3 days, Michael would say. "She's taking anxiety pills. The doctor says she could have a nervous breakdown if we don't resolve this soon." "Well, maybe she should have thought about that before spending money she didn't have," I replied. But my voice no longer sounded as firm. "Don't be cruel, Mom. What will people say when they find out you ruined your own daughter-in-law's wedding?" Then came the surprise visits. They would show up at any time of day or night, ringing the doorbell insistently until I opened the door. Ethan brought his children over on a Wednesday afternoon. "Grandma Clara," Mason said, his eyes watery, "Dad says we can't come see you anymore because you're very mad at us." My heart broke into 1,000 pieces. "I'm not mad at you, my love. I could never be mad at you. Then why does Dad say you won't give him the money so we can have a bigger house?" Ethan had put words in my 8-year-old grandson's mouth. He had turned that innocent child into an instrument of emotional blackmail. "Ethan, how dare you involve the children in this? They have a right to know why their grandmother prefers money to her family's happiness." Lily, my 5-year-old granddaughter, came up to me in her little pink dress and hugged my legs. "Grandma, is it true you have a lot of money saved up?" "Who told you that, my love?" "Aunt Jessica. She says you could buy us lots of toys, but you don't want to." I felt sick. They were using my own grandchildren as weapons against me. "Ethan, take the children and leave now. Not until we talk seriously about this. I have nothing more to talk to you about." "Look, Mom, I'll make you a proposal. Just give me $40,000 now, and I promise I won't bother you again until the trust's deadline is up." "Just 40,000? 2 days ago it was 60,000. I'm being flexible. I can get a good used truck for that amount." "Ethan, even if I wanted to give you that money, I can't access the trust yet. But you have Dad's life insurance. I know it was $75,000. He was right. Arthur's life insurance had arrived the previous week. That money was for my personal expenses, to ensure I could maintain the house and cover my medical needs as I got older. That money is for my living expenses, Ethan. You're 68 years old, Mom. How much do you think you're going to spend? Besides, when you're gone, it's all going to be ours anyway." His words were like daggers. "You're wishing I was dead. Don't be ridiculous. I'm just being practical." That night, I called David in desperation. "I can't take it anymore. They're using my grandchildren against me. They're making the children believe I'm a bad person. Mrs. Miller, what they are doing is called psychological abuse. We can document all of this and use the evidence to get a restraining order, but that would mean I couldn't see my grandchildren. Not necessarily. We could specify that visits with the children must be supervised or in the presence of a neutral third party." The next day, Michael appeared with a new strategy. He brought Arthur's younger sister, Sarah, with him. "Clara, my dear," Sarah said in a soft voice. "Michael told me what's going on, and I'm very worried." Sarah had always been my favorite sister-in-law. She was 5 years younger than Arthur and had been like a sister to me all these years. "Sarah, I'm glad to see you, but if you've come to convince me to give my sons money—" "No, it's not that. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something Arthur confided in me a few weeks before he died." I sat on the edge of the sofa, completely attentive. "What did he tell you?" "He was very worried about the boys' attitude toward money. He told me he'd been noticing how Michael and Ethan always talked about inheritance when they came to visit, as if they were just waiting for you both to die to cash in." Michael turned pale. "Aunt Sarah, that's not true. Let me finish, Michael. Arthur told me, verbatim. Sarah, I'm afraid that when I die, the boys are going to pressure Clara to give them all the money immediately. That's why I set up the trust with so many restrictions. Did Arthur really tell you that? I asked, tears in my eyes. More than that, Clara. He asked me that if something like this happened, to remind you that he had left specific instructions to protect you. He said you had been the most loyal and hard-working wife in the world, and that you deserved to live your final years in peace, without pressure from anyone. Michael stood up abruptly. Those are lies. Dad would never have said that about us. Lies? Sarah took out her cell phone. Arthur sent me this text message 3 weeks before he died. She read aloud. Sarah, if anything happens to me, please make sure Michael and Ethan don't take advantage of Clara. I'm seeing signs that worry me a lot. The money I saved is for her to live with dignity, not to fund our children's whims. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael's face was red with humiliation and fury. Dad was sick. He didn't know what he was saying. Your father had a clearer mind than anyone I've ever known, Sarah replied. And apparently, he was right to be worried. Michael, I said with a trembling voice, your father worked 70 hours a week for years to save that money. He got up at 5 in the morning and came home at 9 at night. He skipped meals to save money. He wore patched-up clothes because he didn't want to buy new ones. All to ensure that I would be protected when he was gone. I know all that, Mom. Then how can you ask me to betray his memory by spending his money on an extravagant party? It's not a party. It's our wedding. A wedding that costs more than what your father earned in 2 years. Sarah came to me and took my hands. Clara, Arthur also told me that if the time came when you had to choose between protecting yourself and pleasing the boys, he hoped you would protect yourself. He told me, Clara has sacrificed her whole life for those kids. It's time someone protected her. Michael headed for the door, but before leaving, he turned back with an expression of pure hatred. Fine, Mom. If that's your final decision, then you should know that Jessica has already contacted a private investigator to look into all your finances. She also spoke with a geriatrician who is willing to testify about the mental decline that prolonged grief can cause in people your age. You're threatening me. I'm informing you. Jessica is not going to let a stubborn old woman ruin the best years of her life. After Michael left, Sarah and I sat in silence for several minutes. Did Arthur really tell you all those things? I asked her. Every word, Clara. Your husband loved you deeply and was genuinely worried about what might happen after his death. Do you think I'm doing the right thing? I think you are honoring the memory of a man who sacrificed his whole life for you and for those ungrateful boys. I'm scared, Sarah. I'm scared of losing my grandchildren forever. Those children will grow up, Clara. One day they will understand the difference between a grandmother who loves them and parents who use them as tools of manipulation. That night, for the first time since Arthur's death, I felt a little less alone. Knowing that my husband had foreseen this situation and had taken steps to protect me gave me the strength to keep resisting. But I also knew that Michael and Jessica were not going to give up easily, and I had the terrible feeling that the worst was yet to come. A week after Sarah's visit, what I can only describe as a total psychological war began. Jessica had decided that if she couldn't get the money by playing nice, she would get it by destroying my reputation and my mental stability. It all started with social media. Eleanor called me one morning, completely frantic. Clara, you need to see this. Jessica posted something horrible on Facebook. I didn't have a social media account, but Eleanor came over with her tablet to show me. Jessica had written a post that read, "Praying for my mother-in-law who is going through a very difficult time after losing her husband. Grief can sometimes make people make irrational decisions that hurt their own family. I hope she finds peace and clarity soon. #family, #grief, #prayers. It seems innocent enough, I told Eleanor. Read the comments. The comments were devastating. Dozens of people who didn't know me were speculating about my mental state, suggesting that grief had made me bitter and vengeful against my own children. Some people even suggested I needed professional intervention. How do all these strangers know details about my life? Jessica is telling everyone that you're a cruel old woman who refuses to help her own children in their time of need. But that was just the beginning. The next day, I received a call from the bank where Arthur and I had kept our accounts for 30 years. Mrs. Miller, this is Jennifer from Client Relations. We received a call of concern about possible fraudulent activity on your accounts. Fraudulent activity? I haven't made any unusual transactions. The caller suggested that you might be the victim of some kind of scam, or that you might not be in a condition to manage your finances properly. Who made that call? I can't disclose that information, but we would like to schedule an appointment to review your financial situation and ensure your assets are protected. I called David immediately. They're trying to make the bank believe I'm not competent to manage my own money. This is an escalation of financial abuse, Mrs. Miller. I'm going to contact the bank immediately to clarify the situation. But things got worse. That afternoon, a man in a suit appeared at my door, identifying himself as a social worker from the county. Mrs. Miller, we received a report of concern about your well-being. Could I speak with you for a few minutes? What kind of report? Someone expressed concern that you might be a victim of financial abuse or that you might need support services due to cognitive decline related to complicated grief. Who made that report? I cannot reveal the identity of the reporter, but I can assure you we just want to verify that you are okay. Luckily, David arrived just then. He had been monitoring the situation closely and appeared as if summoned by a sixth sense. I'm Mrs. Miller's attorney. Could you show me the court order authorizing this investigation? I don't have a court order. This is just a wellness check. Then, Mrs. Miller is under no obligation to speak with you without legal representation present. After the social worker left, David explained the gravity of the situation. They are trying to create an official record that suggests you need intervention. If they accumulate enough reports of concern from different sources, they could use that as evidence in a conservatorship proceeding. How can they do that? It's a complex process, but basically they would need to prove that you cannot manage your own financial affairs due to mental decline or undue influence from third parties. Undue influence from third parties? You mean you and Eleanor? Exactly. They are going to try to paint a picture that we are manipulating you to not give them the money. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake wondering how I had gotten to this point. My own children, the babies I had nursed, the children I had comforted during nightmares, the young men whose education I had helped pay for by cleaning other people's houses, were now trying to destroy my reputation and my mental stability for money. At 3 a.m, the phone rang. It was Jessica. Clara, I hope you are reflecting on the consequences of your actions. What do you want, Jessica? I want you to know that I spoke with Dr. Morrison, the geriatrician I mentioned. He says that complicated grief in people your age can manifest as paranoia, irrational behavior, and poor decision-making. I'm not paranoid, Jessica. I'm perfectly sane. That's exactly what someone who is having problems would say. Look, we can still resolve this amicably. You just need to sign an authorization to access the trust, and all of this can end. I will not betray Arthur's memory. Arthur is dead, Clara. The dead don't need money. The living do. The living also need dignity and respect, things you have completely denied me. Dignity? What dignity is there in being a bitter old woman clinging to money while her own family suffers? My family isn't suffering, Jessica. My family is being greedy. All right. If that's your attitude, I want you to know that I've already hired the private investigator I mentioned. He is going to review every penny you have spent in recent years. If he finds any irregularities, any expense that could suggest mental decline, we will use it against you. Against me? In the legal proceeding we are going to initiate to prove you are not competent to manage the trust. I hung up the phone, trembling with indignation and fear. The next day, Eleanor came over early with even more disturbing news. Clara, yesterday I saw a man with a camera taking pictures of your house. When I asked him what he was doing, he said he was a city inspector checking for code violations. Code violations? I called the city. They hadn't sent any inspector. It was Jessica's private investigator. That's not all. I spoke with Carmen, your neighbor from the Blue House. She says someone contacted her asking about your behavior, if you'd been acting strangely lately. Did Carmen tell them anything? She told them you are the most normal and gentle neighbor she has ever known. But, Clara, they are systematically building a case against you. David arrived an hour later with a somber expression. Mrs. Miller, I have troubling news. Michael and Jessica have hired Robbins and Associates, a law firm specializing in conservatorship proceedings. They are very aggressive and very good at what they do. What does that mean? It means they're not playing games anymore. They are going to initiate a formal proceeding for a judge to declare you incompetent to manage the trust. How much time do we have? They could file the petition at any time. Once they do, you will have to defend yourself in court, which can be very stressful and expensive. What can we do? We have to be proactive. I'm going to schedule that psychological evaluation we discussed. We also need to gather testimonies from people who can attest to your mental competence. Sarah, who had been visiting me daily since the revelation of Arthur's messages, offered to be a witness. Arthur knew me well, she said. He knew this was going to happen, and he specifically asked me to look out for you. I'm not going to let those boys tear down what he built. That night, as I looked at the stars from my bedroom window, I spoke to Arthur as if he were right there with me. Arthur, my love, I hope I'm making the right decisions. Our sons have become people I don't recognize. But I will not betray your memory or your wishes. I will fight to the end. In that moment, I felt a strange peace. For the first time since this nightmare began, I knew with certainty that I was on the right side of this battle. On Monday morning, 2 weeks after Jessica's threat, David arrived at my house with an expression I had never seen on him, a mix of indignation and determination that made me understand something very serious had happened. Mrs. Miller, they filed the petition. Michael and Jessica are officially requesting that a judge declare you incompetent to manage the trust. I felt the floor open up beneath me. Does that mean they're going to win? It means we have a legal battle ahead of us. But we are prepared. I have the psychological evaluation that confirms you are perfectly sane, testimonies from neighbors, and something else that I think will surprise you. What is it? Eleanor didn't tell me everything she had been observing. It turns out she has a security system at her house that captures part of your driveway, and it recorded something very interesting. David took out his phone and showed me a grainy but audible video. It was Michael and Jessica standing in my driveway 3 days earlier when I wasn't home. In the video, Jessica could be heard clearly saying, "If the old woman doesn't give in this week, we'll have to speed up the legal process. My wedding planner says if we don't confirm the payments by Friday, she's canceling the whole contract." "This is perfect," Michael replied. "My contact at the law firm says that with the reports we've been generating, plus Patricia's evaluation, we have a good chance of convincing the judge. And if it doesn't work, then we'll have to consider other options. My mother is old. These things can get complicated in unpredictable ways." He paused the video, a chill running down my spine at the implication of those words. What did he mean by other options? I'm not sure, but the tone suggests something very sinister. Mrs. Miller. This clearly proves that their motivation is purely financial and that they have been orchestrating this campaign from the beginning. Is Patricia even a real social worker? That's the best part. I looked into her credentials. Patricia Lopez lost her license 2 years ago for unethical conduct in a similar case. She was helping families gain control over the assets of seniors through false evaluations. Just then, the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw a white van with the logo of a local news channel. "The press?" I asked, confused. David looked out the window, and his expression hardened. "Jessica is escalating this publicly." We opened the door to find a young reporter with a cameraman. "Mrs. Miller? I'm Jessica Torres from Channel 7 News. We were contacted about a family dispute related to an $800,000 trust. Could you comment on the allegations that you are denying emergency funds to your children?" "No comment." David responded immediately. "I am Mrs. Miller's attorney, and any questions should be directed to my office. We understand that your children are concerned about your mental well-being after the death of your husband. Is there any truth to those reports?" "This interview is over," David said, closing the door. Through the window, we saw the reporter speaking to the camera in front of my house. According to sources close to the family, there is growing concern about a local senior citizen who may be being manipulated by third parties into denying financial support to her own children during a family economic crisis. How did they get the media interested in this? Jessica is very clever. She presented this as a human interest story about elder abuse, but with the roles reversed. She's painting her children as concerned victims and you as a confused old woman being manipulated by strangers. That afternoon, Sarah arrived in a fury with a local newspaper in her hands. "Clara, look at this. They are publicly destroying your reputation." The article was devastating. Local family fights to help grieving mother who denies financial support. The story painted Michael and Ethan as devoted sons, worried about a mother who had changed drastically after her husband's death and was being influenced by strangers to make irrational decisions. The article quoted Jessica, "We just want our mother to get the help she needs. It's heartbreaking to see how grief has changed her. She used to be a generous woman who always put family first. Now she refuses to even speak with us unless her advisors are present. They are creating a completely false narrative," Sarah said, outraged. "And a very effective one," David added. "I've already received 3 calls from journalists asking about the case." But then, something unexpected happened. Eleanor arrived with a triumphant smile. "Clara, I think we have a problem, but also a solution." "What do you mean?" "The problem is that the story is circulating on social media, and some people are posting very nasty comments about you." "And the solution?" "The story also reached my Facebook groups. And it turns out one of my friends knows Jessica very well." Eleanor took out her phone and showed me a message from a woman named Rose. Rose used to work at the bank where Jessica had her account before marrying Michael. She says Jessica was fired for misappropriating client funds. She was never criminally charged because she paid the money back, but she's on a banking blacklist. "Is that verifiable?" "David can investigate it. But there's more. Rose says Jessica has been bragging in her social circles about the extravagant wedding she's going to have with family inheritance money. She's been showing pictures of the dress, the venue, everything." David took notes furiously. "This is gold. If we can prove that she has been spending money she doesn't have, based on the expectation of an inheritance she is not legally entitled to, it completely changes the narrative." I finished the sentence. "Exactly. Instead of a confused old woman denying help to a needy family, we have a greedy daughter-in-law manipulating the media to extort money for frivolous expenses." That night, David worked late preparing a legal counteroffensive. The next day, he filed a motion to dismiss the incompetency case and requested an investigation for elder abuse and extortion. But Michael and Jessica did not give up easily. 2 days later, Ethan showed up at my door with the children again. "Grandma Clara," Mason said, tears in his eyes, "why don't you want Mom and Dad to be happy?" "I want everyone to be happy, my love." "Then why won't you give them the money?" "Mom, Jessica says you have enough to buy 10 houses. Ethan was recording with his phone. "Ethan, you are recording your son emotionally manipulating me. I'm documenting how you behave with your own grandchildren." "Lily," I said to my granddaughter, "come here, sweetie." The little girl approached timidly. "Is it true you don't love us anymore, Grandma?" "I love you more than life itself, Lily. And it's precisely because I love you that I won't let you be used to hurt your grandma." "What does that mean?" "It means that sometimes grown-ups do wrong things when they want money, even using little children to get what they want." Ethan immediately stopped recording. "You just called me a bad father in front of my children. I called you exactly what you are. A man who is using his own children as tools for emotional manipulation. That's it. Kids, let's go. This woman is no longer your grandmother." As they walked away, I heard Lily ask her father, "Daddy, what does manipulation mean?" That night, I cried as I hadn't cried since Arthur's funeral, but they weren't tears of defeat. They were tears of clarity. I finally understood that this battle wasn't just about money. It was about the kind of person I was going to be in the years I had left. A week before the court hearing, David arrived at my house with the biggest smile I had seen on him since this whole nightmare began. "Mrs. Miller, I have extraordinary news." Rose, Eleanor's friend, not only confirmed the information about Jessica, but got us something even better. What did they find? Jessica wasn't just fired from the bank for misappropriation. It turns out she's also being investigated by the IRS for failing to declare income from a consulting business she ran on the side. And best of all, we found the real wedding invoices. David placed a folder full of documents on the table. The wedding doesn't cost $300,000 as they claimed. It costs $120,000. Jessica inflated the figures to make it seem like they needed more money from the trust. $120,000 is still a fortune, of course, but more importantly, they've already paid most of the deposits using credit cards. They are in debt up to their eyeballs, expecting to get the trust money to pay off those debts. That means there was never a real emergency. Exactly. They created the emergency by spending money they didn't have, counting on you to give in to the pressure. Just then, the phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Miller? This is Dr. Morrison, the geriatrician. I think we need to talk. About what, doctor? About the statements I supposedly made regarding your mental capacity. I have never spoken with you or evaluated you. However, someone is using my name to suggest that you have cognitive impairment. David gestured for me to put the phone on speaker. Dr. Morrison, this is David Clark, Mrs. Miller's attorney. Could you explain exactly what happened? A woman who identified herself as Jessica Miller contacted me 2 weeks ago asking about symptoms of dementia related to grief. I gave her general information on the topic, but I never evaluated or diagnosed anyone. Now I find out she is using that conversation to suggest I issued a medical opinion about Mrs. Miller. Would you be willing to testify about this? Absolutely. What that woman is doing is completely unethical and potentially illegal. After the call, David and I looked at each other with a mix of relief and disbelief. Have they been destroying themselves this whole time? It seems so. Greed made them make one mistake after another. The day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom was full. David and I were on one side, Michael and Jessica with their lawyers on the other. Ethan had decided not to show up, apparently having realized the case was falling apart. The judge, a stern-looking older man, first heard the arguments from Michael's lawyers. Your Honor, we are concerned about a 68-year-old woman who has fallen victim to undue influence from non-family members. Since her husband's death, she has exhibited irrational behavior, refusing to support her own family in a time of genuine need. Then David stood up with a bulky folder. Your Honor, what we have here is not an incompetent woman, but a widow being systematically extorted by greedy relatives who have created an artificial financial emergency to prematurely access a trust. David presented Eleanor's recordings, the bank documents showing Jessica's true financial situation, the evidence of the inflated wedding invoices, and the testimony from Dr. Morrison. Your Honor, the petitioners have lied about the real costs of their expenses, misrepresented professional medical opinions, used the media to create public pressure, and employed tactics of emotional abuse, including using minors to manipulate the defendant. Michael's lawyer tried to defend their position, but every argument crumbled in the face of the evidence David presented. Then the judge asked me to speak. Mrs. Miller, do you have anything to say in your own defense? I stood up, my legs trembling but my voice firm. Your Honor, my name is Clara Miller. I am 68 years old, and I have just buried the love of my life after 42 years of marriage. My husband, Arthur, worked 14 hours a day for decades to save the money that is in dispute. He did it not to finance extravagant parties, but to ensure that I could live with dignity in my final years. I looked directly at Michael and Jessica. My sons did not come to their father's funeral. Instead of comforting me in the most difficult moment of my life, they demanded money before Arthur's body was cold in the grave. They have used my grandchildren as emotional weapons against me. They have lied to the media about my mental state. They have threatened to take my grandchildren away from me if I don't give them the money immediately. My voice broke slightly, but I continued. Arthur established a trust with restrictions because he knew our sons better than I wanted to admit. He knew this could happen, and he was right. Your Honor, I finished, I am not an incompetent old woman. I am a grieving woman who refuses to be extorted by her own family. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. The judge deliberated for only 15 minutes before returning with his decision. After reviewing all the evidence presented, this court finds there is no basis whatsoever to declare Mrs. Clara Miller incompetent to handle her financial affairs. On the contrary, the evidence suggests a systematic pattern of manipulation, extortion, and emotional abuse by the petitioners. Michael turned white. Furthermore, the judge continued, this court is ordering an investigation by the district attorney's office into possible criminal charges related to extortion and elder abuse. Jessica shot up and stormed out of the courtroom, followed by her lawyers. Finally, the judge said, "This court is issuing a temporary restraining order prohibiting Michael Miller and Jessica Miller from any contact with Mrs. Miller except through legal representation, pending the outcome of the investigations." When we left the courthouse, I felt as if I had been holding my breath for months and could finally breathe again. "Does this mean it's over?" I asked David. "This means we won this battle, Mrs. Miller. But more importantly, it means you reclaimed your dignity and honored Arthur's memory." 6 months later, when I could finally legally access the trust, I made a decision that I know would have made Arthur proud. I used part of the money to establish the Arthur Miller Foundation, dedicated to helping widows and seniors who are victims of financial abuse by family members. The rest I put into an account that guarantees my care and well-being for the rest of my life. Michael and Ethan never received a single cent of their father's inheritance. And although I lost contact with my grandchildren, I have faith that one day, when they are older and understand what really happened, they will look for their grandmother. Eleanor and David have become my true family. Sarah visits every week, and together we remember the extraordinary man Arthur was. I have learned that sometimes loving someone means saying no, that protecting yourself isn't selfishness, it's survival, and that true family is not defined by blood, but by love, respect, and loyalty. Arthur was right in every one of his precautions, and I was right to defend them, no matter the cost. Today, I live in peace, surrounded by people who love me for who I am, not for what I have. And every night, before I go to sleep, I thank Arthur for having had the wisdom to protect me, even after he was gone.